Hi, welcome to the Coaching Game. I'm Laurie Lawson, and tonight my guest is Allan Lokos. Welcome, Allan.
Thank you so much.
I am thrilled to have Allan here. I heard about him before I met him, and that's always a good sign. And we're going to talk about Allan is the founder and the guiding teacher of the Community Meditation Center in New York City, and he's also the author of what I found to be a fascinating book called Through the Flames. And he's going to tell us how this book came about, and that could take an entire show, but we're gonna see what we get done first. Let me tell you a little bit about the Coaching Game, just in case this is the first time tuning in. The Coaching Game is based on points of view, which is one of the best tools I've ever found. And it's a series of 65 cards designed to bring right and left brain thinking together. And it's just you're walking along and then you're over here and you're not quite sure how you got there. And I love that aspect of it because you're not really sure where you're going to end up. And I usually ask my guests to pick a card, and I was so sure Allan was going to pick the journey card because he has been on a journey, you will not believe. But he chose the love card, which is my favorite card ever. It's, I believe it's a walnut, right? Have a walnut perfectly shaped like a heart. So we're going to find out how that plays a role and where he's been and where he's going. So first, I guess, Allan, tell us about the Community Meditation Center, because that seems to have quite a reputation in New York City. How did that come about?
Let's see. We are now in our 8th year.
Wow.
So I remember having the thought that I wanted to create something like this, and then a very close friend asked me an obvious question. She said, "Why do you want to do this?" And I suddenly realized I didn't have an answer. So believe it or not, I went to see a Jungian psychology friend of mine.
Okay.
And I said to him, "Why do I want to do this?"
What's wrong with me?
You know, being a Jungian, he said, "Sometimes we do things because we must."
Oh, all right.
And somehow that made sense to me. This just felt like something I had to do. So.
Now, had you been a long-time practicer of meditation, or?
Yes, I'm right now, 20 some odd years.
Wow, okay.
So, yes. And, you know, I invited my wife to join me on this project because she's very bright and she's together. And we had done another project from an interfaith perspective. And I think we did a fairly good job, but it just didn't ignite. It didn't take off. We both got discouraged. Ultimately, we closed it. And then over the course of the next 6 months or so, I realized what I really wanted to do was to found a meditation center. And again, even though I didn't know why at the moment, I probably now, 8 years later, know why. Because I see that we have really had an impact on people's lives. And I can't think of anything that I'd rather do and that is more meaningful to me, especially since I'm not 22 years old anymore, and probably in the latter part of my life. I might live to 150, but I'm not expecting it. So this is
a goal.
Right, well, it depends on how the body and mind hold up, you know.
Exactly.
So I'm just so glad I've done some really joyful things in my life. I mean, ranging from being on Broadway and getting to sing some opera, which is my great love, and then get to teach singers. But this just feels like the most meaningful, especially in this part of my life, as I realize that there's nothing else I'd rather do than teach meditation, teach the Dharma, which is Eastern philosophy coming primarily from the Buddha. And I hear from people every day that this is really impacting their lives, and for me, nothing could be better.
You busted the myth, because I have to tell you, his center is right smack dab in the middle of New York City. So you busted the myth that you need to be on a mountaintop chanting. And where is your center located?
It's on the Upper West Side of New York. We have a space on Columbus and 88th for our Sunday sessions, and then on West 83rd between Columbus and Amsterdam for our Wednesday night sessions. All are welcome. You've wanted to start meditating.
I have for 3 years, and I'm not sure. I'll have to tell you how your book helped me. I attribute meditation and yoga to getting me to New York City 30 years ago. Why I can't sit down now for 5 minutes and meditate, I have no idea. But there was something in your book that helped me so much. But tell me, if people have never meditated before, can they come and learn how to meditate? Or
yes, absolutely. In fact, on Sundays we actually do a little introductory session, 15 minutes or so, just so newcomers can be comfortable and have an idea of what's going on. And then whenever we do group meditations, we do what's called a guided meditation, so that the teacher, in many cases that would be me, is actually guiding the meditators through the process, and then we leave silence for a while so the experienced meditators get some time in quiet. And it's good to have that balance, guidance and then silence. Yes, anyone can do it, but that is not to suggest that it's just an easy thing that you sit down and, as you said, why can't we sit down in a quiet place and watch what's going on in the mind? We really don't know the answer to that, except that it is the nature of the mind to kind of jump from thought to thought to thought, to feeling, to sensation to sensation. And the practice of meditation is really one of mind training, training the mind so that rather than going where it seems to want to go, back and forth here and there, what's going on, what'll I have for dinner, why did I say that last week, but rather I can focus on one, we call it an object of concentration, might be the sensations of the breath, which is the traditional practice. And we learn how to just gently bring the focus back to that one object. And I don't mean to make that sound easy, because I know that it isn't. So someone recently I read is a colleague wrote, it seems that mindfulness and meditation is so in right now. Everyone is talking about it. And he said it seems like meditation is something we're all glad everyone else is doing.
No, I'm jealous. I have to tell you, I'm jealous. But I think one of the things that's daunting is your mind needs to be blank, and my mind is never blank. And it's like, so to calm it down, and I've heard people say, just let it roam and bring it back. Go where you're going and come on back. I can't understand why I can't do this. But
well, here's your first hint. We'll reframe something.
Okay.
The mind is not going to go blank.
Ever, right.
Mind is that. Now, sometimes we're just mindless, and we think that we might call blank, but that's not really serving us in any way. That's a state of mindlessness. Even the phrase empty the mind, you're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. So the first thing we try to teach is to understand the nature of mind, even though there's so much about mind that we don't know. Mind and brain are not the same thing. We know a lot about the brain. We can actually take it out of a cadaver. We can feel it. We can examine it.
It's a hot subject now, how it works.
Absolutely. The neuroscientists are doing incredible work, teaching us a lot. Mind is different. We don't know where a thought comes from, and we don't know where it goes. But something is going on. I mean, try to define what a thought is. I'm going to try to define what a thought is. I can't do it, but I know that they're there. I don't know where they've been before they arise in consciousness, and I don't know where they go after consciousness, but it's that time in consciousness. So phrases like empty the mind and make the mind a blank, I'd leave those out. I think that the practice is much more about awareness of what's arising in the mind. There's a thought. There's nothing wrong with that. That is the nature of mind. Thought, feeling, emotion, the awareness of physical sensation. And the process in the beginning, the initial part of training the mind is simply awareness, observing, taking note, without judgment, without self-criticism, and without clinging and grasping. Almost as if we say, oh, thought, oh, feeling, oh, little ache, sensation, oh, okay, that's interesting.
And then go back.
And that's it. Yes, exactly. Then just Gently bring your awareness back to the chosen object that you're going to work with that day. And as I said, traditionally we use the sensations of the breath.
Now, okay, well that brings to, we're going to talk about your book and the whole thing, but that brings me to something that helped me so much in your book. What, is that the same as mindfulness?
Well, meditation and mindfulness are not the same, although there is certainly a significant relationship.
Because I can do mindfulness. I can't, not for a long time, but I can do it. But meditation, no. But mindfulness, I love your exercises in there. It's like, take something and just chew it and feel it and smell it and taste it.
Right. Well, meditation, as I said, is a practice, a training of the mind so that we can be mindful. We want to live our days mindfully, but we're not necessarily walking through the streets of New York or any other streets for that matter in a state of meditation, just focusing on the breath, because I'd rather be aware of the cars that are coming and the people who are walking toward me, because they're not aware of me, because they're on their cell phones doing this. And if I'm not mindful, I get that.
Somebody gets hurt. Yes.
Right. So we want to use the practice of meditation to become mindful.
Wow.
Mindfulness is different. Mindfulness is, again, grounded in awareness, but it has other qualities as well. Mindfulness actually, something that's usually left out in the current rage about mindfulness. Mindfulness needs the ground of wholesome or skillful intention. You know, as an example, a sniper up on a rooftop with his or her rifle, carefully aiming, prepared to assassinate someone, very concentrated, very aware of surroundings, but we don't say that that person is mindful because his intention is not positive. Not one, if I could use the classical language for a moment, not one of wanting to alleviate or end suffering. In fact, his action is likely to cause suffering. Mindfulness, when practiced, will lead to alleviating suffering, which is why we're so interested in the practice.
Oh, now I'm even more intrigued, and I've read the whole book, actually. So mindfulness will alleviate suffering. Okay.
Well, let's say it's going to lead us in that direction. And over time, I mean, look, a Buddha, if we can really go back 2,500 years, a Buddha simply means an enlightened being. An enlightened being, by definition, is one who does not cause suffering for himself or for others. So that's a noble goal as far as I'm concerned. So moving in that direction, even if it takes us many lifetimes, would seem to me to be quite worthwhile. What do you think?
And it's 5 minutes a day. That's what I keep telling myself, surely. But I have a block, and I'm not sure what it is. But so I'm going to come. I'm going to come. You're going to see me at you. You're going to see me on a Sunday morning, yes.
We have an all are welcome policy.
Oh, good. Okay. And you can start wherever you start.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Then I'll fit in just fine. We got to talk about this book. We have to talk about this book called Through the Flames. And the title is perfect because it's literal and figurative. You want to tell us about the journey?
Well, I'll tell you how this came to be.
Okay.
And
I'm not sure I wasn't born on
right.
You don't have to start that early. But
No. But I would want to preface this by saying that particularly the early part of this book is difficult. It speaks about a traumatic event, a real event, and my attempt was not to aggrandize or exaggerate in any way. Still, the event is about a plane crash. My wife and I were vacationing in Burma or Myanmar, and within the country we were on a commercial flight with 70 other people, and the plane crashed. It was a serious matter, not just a bump on the ground. It was a situation where the pilot came in about a mile short of the runway. On the way down, because he was in the wrong place, he sheared through electrical wires that sparked, and the plane immediately burst into flames. It was serious within the plane filled with a thick black smoke. You couldn't see anything. It became increasingly difficult to breathe. My wife felt that she would never be able to make it out the front because she was already choking. We saw that the emergency exit had popped open, and even though it was engulfed in flames, it seemed the only choice for us was to try to jump out through the flames to whatever was beneath us. We didn't know. So we got near the door, and then I gave her a big push, and she went out. My intention was to follow right after her, but we couldn't see, and my leg caught on something, and I was caught right in the flames, in the fire. Injured seriously enough so that the doctors said I would not live through those injuries. Not just one doctor, but the doctors there in Burma, then in Bangkok, Singapore, here in New York, all felt that one could not live through. It
was unanimous.
33% of my body being burned to what would have been called third-degree burns. Today they use different terminology. They call it full-thickness burns. How I lived through it, I don't know. I was conscious, other than when I was put out for grafting and surgeries, still have these pressurized gloves on my hands, which reduce they flatten and soften scar tissue. They're supposed to be effective for a year. Mine have been on now for 2 years and are still helping.
Wow.
I have no fingerprints, opening up all kinds of possibilities, which I'll probably pass on. So the journey back was very difficult. You know, I can't try to sugarcoat that. The oddity is that being released from months of hospitalization and then finally coming home, you would think, this is it, things are going to be so much better. And that was absolutely diametrically opposed to reality. It became horrible when I was home. I was unbelievably weak. I had lost 25 pounds through this ordeal. And don't try this as a crash diet, pun intended. It's not worth it. But weak, had no use of my hands whatsoever, couldn't really walk very much. I was totally in the hands of strangers, taking care of me in every way, feeding me, washing me, wiping me, everything. And it was awful. One of the worst parts was that my bedrock for helping me, which is meditation, couldn't do it. I essentially had no use of my mind at that time, was not cognizant of much at all. I knew my name, I knew the date of my birth, I knew who the president was, so they released me from the hospital, but that doesn't mean I really understood what was going on, because I didn't. Fortunately, in the tradition that I practice, we keep our relationship with our teachers, and our teachers keep relationships with their teachers. So I was advised by my teacher that, no, you can't meditate right now, your mind is not working. And we need a clear mind, which is why we avoid things that cloud the mind, like abusing alcohol or other such substances. But with time, I think this title even adds as a subtitle, Overcoming Disaster Through Compassion. Compassion for oneself, very important, patience, and determination. You need patience. Fortunately, my previous book was titled Patience. Determination, because it's rough. It's, you just don't think you're ever going to get out of the depths. And I'm reminded often, a friend of mine, a fellow teacher named Tara Brock, as an endorsement, wrote something that I think is very significant. She said, whether your crash is a divorce, the death of a dear one, loss of financial security, or serious illness, this beautiful written story will guide you, etc., etc. And I think that is really why I wrote this. I didn't write this to tell you the story of a plane crash because, frankly, it's a disturbing story. But I think we all go through crashes, and they just have different names. Divorce, death of a dear one, financial loss, getting bad news from our doctor, looking in the mirror one day and realizing, gee, I see some lines there. I see gray hair. I don't see gray hair, but you might see gray hair. These are the crashes that we go through in life. And I think that for me, what was underlying the work to write this book was we can do it. We can get through the worst of times. We need patience. We need determination. What that card says, love.
How did that get you through?
Well, number one person, my wife. She was injured herself, and yet every doctor who said he's not going to live, she just paid no attention to that. She got me out of Myanmar when essentially they didn't want Americans, they didn't want it known that Americans were injured there. So there was a lot of political red tape, and she just never quit. Finally got me through Bangkok to Singapore, where there's an excellent burn clinic. That was a good start. And then ultimately to New York, where again there's an excellent burn clinic. And her love and support and dealing with incredible trauma, seeing the way I looked, which was burnt to a crisp, to put it pretty directly. And then the love of family. You mentioned that I'm the guiding teacher of the Community Meditation Center. Community is really the right word. In Sanskrit, we use the word Sangha. That community was an incredible support and still is. Every week when I go in, how are you feeling, Allan? Anything we can do, Allan? Just amazing and incredible. And while on that subject of support, I've really become an advocate of advocacy. Everyone should have an advocate in case you are suddenly in a hospital. I had never spent a minute in a hospital bed before this incident. You never imagine that something could happen. Without my wife, I would not have made it through. There's absolutely no question about that.
Advocacy, you're absolutely right. I used to have a geriatric care business, and that was our soul. And our thing was, your job is to be sick. We need to be there to fight the fight for you. You can't do it all, and especially you don't care. I mean, your head is like, I hurt, you know. It's like, when are you taking this bandage off?
And what if you're not conscious?
Yeah.
I couldn't have made any decisions for myself. And maybe it's not a husband, wife, or partner. That might not be someone in your life right now. Maybe it needs to be a friend. But it needs to be someone. You need to make an arrangement, which is, I will be your advocate. Will you be my advocate? Oh, what does that mean? Well, what it means is I can call you at any time, day or night, and say, I'm on my way to the hospital. There's something wrong. Will you be there? And you're going to say yes. Just as you can call me at any time, and I will drop what I'm doing to be there so that you are safe and you are cared for. In the hospitals, they will say the same thing. Have an advocate. Because they're overworked. You know, hospitals are incredible institutions, and they do magnificent work, but they're overworked. There are signs now in most hospitals that say, have an advocate.
Oh, are there? Okay, good.
There are mistakes made. There's no one to blame, and there's no fault implied here. It's just the way things are. Very busy, lots of people to be cared for, fatigue, thousands and thousands of pills being dispensed every day.
And if you can't clearly articulate what's going on, then they have to assume, and based on that. So I think if there's one piece of solid, realistic information, I love that you said that. It's like, have someone be with you. You know, your job is to be sick and get well. That's what you have to do. So you have lived through, we've got like 3 minutes. You've lived through everybody's worst nightmare, which is, you know, it's like I have to say after 9/11, I don't jump on planes as much as I used to. It's like, oh, you have to really convince me. But I know you say patience, determination. What would you say when somebody does have their crash, and I love that we're using that metaphorically, what got you through? How, and was meditation prior to that, because you had founded the center prior to the crash, was that any help to you, do you feel?
I would say, although I can't prove this, but I would say that it saved my life in a key moment. Remember I said that after I pushed my wife out, I was stuck and I was in the fire.
Yeah.
It wasn't around me, I was in it. So here's an odd thing. Think about this. I knew I was on fire. I knew I was in extreme danger, and I was really scared. Meditation does not take away fear.
Yes.
I was really scared, but at the same time, I knew exactly what was going on. I was calm. Wow. I could feel that my leg was caught, and I knew I didn't have much time, and I had to free that leg. And I believe that calm in a terrifying situation is a product of working with your mind day after day. And, you know, I'm serious about it. I spend a lot of time with it. I'm not a 5-minuter.
Right. Neither am I, but
and
I want to be.
We're on different sides of the 5 minutes.
I know,
I really believe that I would not have been able to be that together in that moment otherwise.
Yeah, even though it was terrifying. I don't know. I guess what I want to tell everybody is your story is fascinating. The book is so well written, and he has little tricks in there about, you know, how to really get yourself focused or get yourself aware of what's going on. Now, then also we have the meditation center, which I'm going to go over that again. Tell everybody where it is, because you only have like 45 seconds.
We're on Columbus Avenue and 88th. You could also just go to my website, which is allanlokos.com, ALLANLOKOS.com.
At the bottom, yes.
Right. The Meditation Center has a website also, CMC New York, spelled out, .org. Okay. A lot of information about the Meditation Center there. And as I said, everyone is welcome. Don't worry about it if you've never meditated. You'll be fine.
Okay, I think you're going to see me there. I really think I'm going to do it this time. So, Allan, I can only thank you for being who you are, first of all, and sharing everything that you've learned, because it hasn't been an easy lesson. So thank you so much for being on the Coaching Game. It has been fantastic.
So happy to be here.